What's going on, Stronghold family? Today we're going to be talking to you guys a little bit about this really interesting law called Wolff's Law. Yes, it's a good old Wolff's Law. So what exactly is Wolff's Law, Dr. Zach?
So Wolff's Law was developed in the 19th century by an anatomist and surgeon, Dr. Wolff. And basically it states that when there is pressure on our bones, the bones will grow and adapt to that area. So similar to how a tree will grow, and if there's something around that tree, it'll grow around that area. It's basically the principle for the first stage of degeneration. So arthritis, degeneration, all due to Wolff's Law. So whenever we start to lose the curves in our back and there's instability in our spine, those vertebrae start to rub on each other and they start to expand out, forming osteophytes and bone spurs.
Like often what'll happen is people will hear about degeneration, degenerative disc disease, degenerative joint disease, and think there's like a problem with them, right? Mm-hmm. Is it really a problem, or is it the body doing what it's supposed to?
Yeah, it's the body adapting to the stress that's being put on the bones.
Yeah, so for Wolff's Law, really what it is like a cause and effect type of thing. Primarily what it causes in the long run is going to be degeneration in our spine. Mm-hmm. But it's actually our body responding to the stress that it's currently under, and usually it's that physical stress. So if we don't have the right curve in our neck, the right curve in our low back, it causes our weight distribution, like down through our spine, to put all of that pressure on the wrong bone joint or the wrong segment. So like an L5 compressed disc, a disc compression in the middle part of the neck. These are examples of the underlying process, or like the starting process that leads into that end range degeneration. But Wolff's Law is the actual process. So the punching in the arm analogy. So if Dr. Max was good. Dude, not that hard of a punch. So anyway, he punched him in the arm.
Today, buddy.
Yep, punched him in the arm, and so his arm's probably going to swell and bruise a little bit there. Now, if he were to do like a lighter punch, right, like a little light punch, but it was always in the same spot, it always being in the same spot right there, eventually over time, your body's got to go through some type of like change to adapt to that.
Yep.
And so eventually over time, it'll probably end up forming scar tissue right on that spot where I keep contacting my knuckle into the skin. Mm-hmm. So it's the same type of philosophy with Wolff's Law. The same part of the spine is under an increased amount of crazy stress, and over time, gravity never takes a day off, right? So because gravity never takes a day off, that area just stays compressed. What our body actually does is change the shape of your bones, which is kind of gnarly to think about, but that's where bone spurs come from. It's the body saying, hey, that's not stable, I don't like that spot, so let me go ahead and make the surface area of that bone bigger, and it just over time starts depositing extra bone, and then in doing that, depositing all the extra bone, it changes the shape. And then you get a gnarly bone spur, osteophyte. So if that were the case and we have degeneration in the spine, like what are some of the symptoms that patients might see, Dr. Max?
Decreased range of motion, first of all, especially in the neck is where I think we see it most commonly.
Yeah.
As far as the bone spurring and osteophytes, that is. Pain as well is going to be associated with it.
That's the one right there.
Yeah.
Like everybody's like watching our video right now, like, oh, that's the spot right there. So some pain in the neck, headaches. You can have all the connection points in the spine are typically where you're going to see Wolff's Law most often. So the middle part of the neck, upper part of the back, and that CT junction of the spine, middle part of the back on that part of the spine, lower part of the rib cage, and then right above the tailbone. And so those are all the common areas where people end up having pain.
Pain, yeah.
So I guess the golden rule at this point becomes, how do we know whether or not we have Wolff's Law taking place? That might be a good thing, and I'll just speak to it real quick. It's you take x-rays. Mm-hmm. And on the x-rays, if you're seeing poor curve angles in your neck or in your low back, if you've got degeneration that's taking place, that is in fact Wolff's Law. And if we have Wolff's Law, then how do we stop Wolff's Law?
We correct that structure. So Wolff's Law is bad structure over stress and time. So using those x-rays, we see where all the misalignments are. We start to straighten that spine. We get you in here. You do your neck traction to allow for more space in those discs. You do your wobble disc exercises, and then the biplate too helps with all of that
I was just doing
as well.
Yep. So we got to change the structure, and ultimately, at the end of the day, that's why you guys are here. Chiropractic care, the full spine corrective care that we're doing here is all about improving curve angles in the spine so that we can stop the underlying process and we can take pressure off of the areas where there is stress so that your body stops Wolff's Law. What's Wolff's Law's best friend?
The moon.
No! In soft tissue, so the equivalent of Wolff's Law in soft tissue, you know it.
Davis's law.
Yeah,
Yes.
Davis's law. And it's essentially the same thing. That was the example of punching in the arm with scar tissue. So it's just instead of soft tissue, it's happening specifically with bones for Wolff's Law. So Wolff's Law, can Wolff's Law be changed?
No, it is a law.
Okay.
Can the law of gravity be changed?
No.
No.
What about the law of gravity in water? Here's a great example. Buoyancy, the law of buoyancy. So Wolff's Law can't be changed, but if we study it and we know what Wolff's Law is, we know it's a process, and it's a universal process, then we can circumvent that process by understanding it first of all, and then taking the appropriate actions to offset it, right? So like the law of buoyancy is if I throw a rock in the water, what happens to that rock?
It's going to sink.
Yeah, but how come I can have a battleship float, this massive ship made out of rock, concrete, and steel and like all of this really dense, heavy product?
Because you're bending the laws.
Yeah, so it's because I understand the
We're
law.
in the
though.
Matrix.
So understanding the law allows you to take appropriate action so that you don't end up being the result of that law. And so the law of buoyancy is real simple. It's if I increase the surface area, then it offsets the density of that object. And so the bigger, wider surface area in the bottom part of that aircraft carrier, that's how that can float. It offsets all of the weight. So same thing here, the Wolff's Law, it's taking place for every single one of us. I guarantee you if you're watching this video, Wolff's Law is happening because there is a constant that we can't change, and that constant is gravity. Gravity is always weighing down on your spine. It's always weighing down on you. And so because gravity is always weighing down on us, we understand that it produces Wolff's Law, then we can circumvent Wolff's Law by taking the appropriate action, spinal corrective care, home supportive exercises, improving the curve angles in our spine, and taking stress off of those weak spots. So, Wolff's Law, how? Signing off.